Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I thought we were in trouble there for a second with the camera. I think we are good. Good to see you, Linda. Great to see you. Good morning. Ruggers, you got that. Cindy, great to see you. Sometimes the computer just types what it wants to type, regardless of what you mean. Karen, great to see you. Thanks for the photos. I'm going to share those this morning. Mom, you are on. Good morning. Great to see you. I hope the link is good. It doesn't seem like many buddies are on. Oh, it's Tuesday. I'm doing like a pop-up on a Tuesday. Heidi, goedemorgen. Actually, no, it's not the morning, is it? Eva. Good to see you. Logging on much later. Always happy to see you. Hello, Linda H. in Massachusetts. Good to see you. Whew, I scared myself. My heart is still beating. Sometimes I turn everything on and there's, an update. And the screen just looks different than it ever has before, and I just don't know why. No sound, no audio. Okay. Audio? Does that sound any better? I'll wait for the delay. As my mouth runs, I'll wait and see if, hopefully, let's see what's happening. I can't imagine what's happening. No sound. Okay. Well, that's not good, is it? I'm going to keep chattering in case the sound comes on. Volume very low. Okay. I'm just putting my volume up. Okay. Let me know if this is any better. I'm definitely not going to run if you can't hear me. That would be crazy. But I haven't touched anything. No. Okay. So, let's see. Any better? I just touched something on the screen. I wonder if that's it. Let me know if we're doing any better. Sorry about this. Still very low. Oh dear. All right, well, we might have to abort mission if we cannot get Joy here. No. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Yes. Okay. Something changed? I've had trouble with low sound for a long time. Much better. Tad, good morning. So, yes, you can hear me. Okay. Well, okay, I have it on absolutely everything full volume, but good now. Okay, excellent. Good to know. You know what happened? It's not interesting. They changed my screen, and now I have a mixer as part of my lineup, and all the mixing settings were like at the beginning, like the lowest possible sound. Doesn't that seem crazy that it would default to that? Doesn't that seem like anti-logical? Okay, well, we are together now. That sounds good. Excellent. Great to see you. Happy Tuesday. Not our usual day, but we are together. Oh, Suze, good to see you. Everybody says doing better. Dave, great to see you. Beverly, Lynn, everybody, great to see you. Barbara, hello in Toronto. Okay, good. All right, it's on full blast. Hopefully it's not too loud. It did change. It's great now. Okay, good. Excellent. Who knows how these things begin? You know how we're going to begin today? Unexpected, because we have a lot of content to do today. We are returning to our conversation on the Navajo rug in its many forms, from its many trading posts, using this book as our sort of backbone, because this really is the definitive book on the Navajo rug. Courtney, great to see you. Good to see you. But we'll start with something different today. Mom, I don't know if you saw this online this morning, but I have to share this because one of our relatives posts, we post a lot of poetry in our circles. My mom posts a ton. I rarely post anything that doesn't have to do with rug hooking because of busyness, but I love to see poetry posts. And one of our cousins, right, Barbara, this morning, Mom, posted the most beautiful poem I think I have ever heard. So I want to start this episode, nothing to do with the Navajo rugs, just moment of poetry. Share this with you because this really is, it's a poet I've never heard of before. And she is called Allison Luterman, Luterman. I looked her up. Hey, Nancy. And there are quite a few. Hey, Kirsten. Quite a few books of hers, and some of them quite expensive compilations. A lot of her poetry online. This one, I don't know where Cousin Barbara found it, but it is a beautiful poem. So this is how it goes. It's a short poem, and it goes like this. The name of it is I Confess. I confess, I stalked her in the grocery store, her crown of snowy braids held in place by a great silver clip, her erect bearing radiating tenderness, the way she placed yogurt and avocados in her basket, beaming peace like the North Star. I wanted to ask, what aisle did you find your serenity in? Do you know how to be married for 50 years or how to live alone? Excuse me for interrupting, but you seem to possess some knowledge that makes the earth burn and turn on its axis. But we don't request such things from strangers nowadays. So I said, I love your hair. That's it. Isn't that great? I just thought that is just like the epitome of, I mean, it really speaks to the way life is today, because you see somebody sometime and you're so just attracted to them or something about them, and you so wish that you could say something, you know, that you mean, but you do end up, I constantly complimenting people on stupid things like that. I love your dress, and oh, you know, just very shallow. When I really mean something else, it really tapped into that poem for me. So many moments. So I hope that you like that too. I'm going to look up that author and start reading up on her, because she's obviously fantastic, right? Contemporary. Cat's Gallery, great to see you. You on your way to dye silk ties with your hookers. We watched your video. Oh, fantastic. You know, it's so funny that you say that. It's kind of funny that you say that, because I had one of my waking up at 3 a.m. Good times last night. I took 2 sleeping pills at 4:30, so it's amazing I can function at all. I woke up and I started thinking about the studio and the new space I'm moving to across the way, and I started thinking about silk ties, because I still have thousands of silk ties, really colorful ones. And I started thinking about ways to display them, because right now I have a lot of pegboard action going on with dangerous spikes sticking out that hold yarn and things. And I was thinking at that time of night about you see so many display things in thrift stores and at flea markets. And I was thinking, oh, I bet I can find something different to display those thousands of silk ties. And I should get going on maybe a shorter video on silk ties or whatever, and link it to a kit or something like that, because I don't know what I was thinking for a while, but I must have been doing some kind of weird therapy collecting these silk ties. I mean, it's like thousands and thousands. That'll be a fun exercise, won't it? You got to post some pictures or let me know how it goes. Really fun. You never know what you're getting, but make sure you look at that water for any kind of red, because red comes out of almost every color, including brown and navy, definitely black. So you want to keep an eye on that water, because if there's something in the water that's red and you don't notice it, it'll pink out everything else. You might have to just keep changing the water until the red like exhausts itself. Something is tickling me like crazy, as long as it's not a tick or something. Oh, I'm glad you love it. All right, you know what? Let's come to commentary quickly, because there's so much to say. Because this posts and rugs, the story of Navajo rugs and their homes by H.L. James, turned into a bit of a portfolio with all the pages separating. I took out, so that I could work better, I took out the pages that we covered yesterday. And where we left off yesterday, Richard Chamberlain moment, right, with the mini-series, where we left off yesterday was when we stopped at the point where we were talking about how some of these trading post owners and operators would put up pictures on the wall, either from magazines or sources in the East, or have hired the sort of wealthier ones that were asking a lot more for their rugs and running a much more sort of high-end operation, would hire known artists to draw pictures of rugs, design, and pin those up on the wall for the rug room, where the rug makers worked and sometimes sold the rugs in the same room, which was a huge part of most trading posts. They would pin those up as an inspiration until more inspiration came. And that would kind of dictate what the style was, and that certainly has affected over time our use of the expression Navajo rug, Navajo style, Navajo design, when it is kind of ironic, funny, and enlightening to know that what we think of as Navajo design, I think in many cases, are designs that were made by already well-known artists who are not Navajo at all, who are just trying to design a product that spoke to both the sort of feel and look of a Navajo rug, maybe a motif or two, but also spoke to what was selling and popular on the East Coast. So that's where we left off. And that brought us right to a period. Oh, let's start here. Let's start. Karen sent me, we were talking when we left off about natural dyes, because we were at the point where we were saying, all the Navajo trading posts were at one point using, of course, natural dyes until they had access to aniline dyes, the chemical dyes. And when that happened, that was a game changer for some posts more than others, because some posts went right for the 1980s colors, foreshadowing red, black, the really dark indigo blue, those very highly saturated, intense forms of color that you cannot get with natural dyes. And the conversation moved toward, does anybody do natural dyeing in the thread? And some people were answering yes, or I think it lasts just as well, or I don't think it lasts as well. I can't get the colors I want. I do get the colors I want. This is always going to be a moving target of a conversation. But Karen, thank you so much. Karen is on now. Thank you so much for sending some pictures of what your dye colors. First, I'll show your dye swatches that you made, right? So what's this one on top? Coreopsis? I don't know that word at all. I probably should be ashamed, but that is a really beautiful mustard color. Blueberries, super pretty mellow color, very, very gray blue, right? Very stormy blue. I absolutely love this entire swatch card. The one below, blueberries and raspberries, and the one below that, bronze fennel. Fantastic colors. Absolutely love these natural colors. These are amaranth. And then on the right, Karen, you wrote hot water bath, so a little bit of a modification to that one. One looks more coral, the other looks more pink. Those are just stunning, stunning colors. And under there, cochineal, cold water, over amaranth, so you're fooling around with layers of color and dyeing more than once. Oh, Heidi says, Coreopsis, yellow flowers with a brown heart. Oh, nice. That's a beautiful description. Sue says there's a store in Salida, Colorado, Tribal Rugs. The proprietor is a delight to talk to and extremely knowledgeable about Native American rugs. Interesting. Oh, how fun. That would be a fun style. I wish I could get there in person. I mean, one of these days for sure. Dave says, still have my Navajo style placemats. From 1989, no shame. Dave, I have some of those too. I'm going to have to take a picture of them. They have faux log cabin action happening. Very Santa Fe prints from the current, at that time, quilt catalog. Really funny. Oh my God, that is too funny. And all right, more swatch cards. I want to just finish this conversation on dye, unless anybody, because there's different people on today, if you have more to say about the dyeing with natural colors as opposed to chemical dyes, please chime in, because the question came up yesterday, do they last? Can they last? And I do not use natural dyes, I use chemical dyes. So the only times I've dyed natural dyes are in classes or workshops, things like that, just for fun. But I don't use them in my rug hooking, and if you do, we would love your feedback on this as well. And then this one, Karen, Marguerite Daisies over Emerald. So that has that kind of pinky purple base and overdyed with indigo. Beautiful. Oh, I see, I get it. The first one, the daisies, the second one is the over amaranth, and the third one is the overdyed with indigo. That's a nice, intense indigo. And she used all these colors to make, am I right, this rug, which is absolutely stunning. Love this composition. I love this sort of historic ornamental quality of it. And I love the little very narrow dark black borders with what looks like a little leafy design. Very, very smart, very interesting. My eye is drawn all over the place. Really beautiful colors. Karen, thank you so much for sending that. That really helps with that conversation. Let me come back to you for a minute. So, leaving off yesterday, again, at the point where we were talking about Navajo design and how maybe it's not quite as pure as one would think, right, because of the use of professional artists. That brought us right to 1920. So let me just catch up where we were. So I took out a page that I much needed, right, while I was synthesizing my book here. I think I'm just trying to remember what the backstory was. Right around that time, what happened was, I'm going to screw this up because the pages are over there. The U.S. government introduced a different breed of sheep to the reservations to try to help out. I feel like it was a French breed. I feel like the word is something like this. It was another word that I have not used or heard before, something like Rambouillet or something like that. Is that a sheep breed? Something like Rambouillet, something like that. Sorry, I'm just going on memory, but the U.S. government introduced at the sort of peak of manufacture and design and innovation and inspiration this new sheep in great numbers to reservations. And apparently the sheep was fantastic for fleece, for warmth, for food, but terrible for dyeing because this sheep had really short, very coarse, oily fur, wool. God, what is wrong with me? I'm not good with this part of the process. I have no knowledge. So what happened was people, weavers, were sort of being forced by default because there's so many of the sheep and they're kind of outpowering the other sheep, and it becomes at a certain point like your only choice is to use this sheep or not. People are trying to weave and spin and create fibers, card the wool from this animal, and it really doesn't work. So what happens is you end up with a textile that is really rough and coarse and looks dirty. And they're attempting to use it, and while they're weaving with it, even their white light colors look grayish and dirty. So this is a really big problem because this is now their supply, their only supply option. At a certain point, this is the sheep that they are pulling from. Yes, everyone, hi. It's a type of sheep. Okay, excellent, excellent. Similar to merino. It did say that. It said that. Good. We are on the right track. Thank you so much, Janice. But it was not a good one for trying to spin and weave. And the rugs from this whole region ended up looking quite dirty, not very marketable. It not only had a drastic effect on, as you can imagine, sales, the popularity of these rugs, the vogue for these rugs, but it had a huge impact on the morale of the weavers, right? And everybody who was involved in the process got super gloomy. And the whole craft in around 1920, because of the, I'm going to say Rambouillet, that might not be the right pronunciation, sheep, had a major downspin, right? Gloom. Everybody's just at the point where it's like it's time to give up, right? Too many setbacks. But this is the second really, after the internment and the roundup, this is the second really low point of the business. Oh, you raised them. How cool. You're the right person to ask. So there is an absolute lost initiative feeling happening around 1920. And right after we hit 1920, because as with most things in life, when you hit the absolute bottom, you start to come up again. The pendulum swings and you get some more momentum and things start to look up. Things are looking up. I've been looking the landscape over. You know that song? So things are starting to look up, and it's 1920 to 1940 becomes the period known as the revival period. So what happens is instead of being gloomy and lacking sort of motivation and inspiration, there are a few people who emerge in the Navajo rug world who take the thing by the horns, no pun intended, and steer it around and bring it back, turn that frown upside down. One of those people was Leon McSparran of the Chinle, Chinle. We haven't gotten to looking at that post, but we talked about it yesterday. Trading post. And the other was a Navajo benefactress, and her name was Mary C. Wheeler. She undertook a program that encouraged weavers of that district to experiment with the old vegetable dyes, right? Not the chemical dyes, but the vegetable dyes that were used prior to the introduction of the commercial dyes, and that was 1880. So the Chinle weavers are developing, using the original dyes, the natural dyes, they're developing a pastel palette. So I don't know, and this book doesn't address how using different colors or using natural colors combated the problem of the quality of the material. That isn't explained, and maybe that's something for further research. I honestly probably won't get to it, but it's an interesting point. I don't want you to think I'm skipping over it. It's not sort of a natural transition that we're making here. But in any case, the Chinle trading post one of the, this is all Navajo, right? All Navajo. This is branches of. They start developing this new color palette that is closer to, just like if you remember in yesterday's episode, Hubble, the Hubble Trading Post, we're coming back there with a vengeance in this episode. But the Hubble Trading Post at one point started to move back toward the classic designs, away from the Germantown eye dazzlers and back toward the pure, simple designs from the beginning, the classics. And that is what the Chinle Post will do too. Pastel dyes and back to the early classic period of the Navajo rug, which refers to yesterday's episode. So they start putting out these classic period, revival classic period patterns with simple stripes and bands, borderless fabric. So border is gone, at least for Chinle, but other trading posts keep that heavy black border or that very complicated border, but Chinle is doing something very, very different. And this is going to have an effect on the vogue, on the desire for, with the Eastern market, having these kinds of rugs, right? It's going to bring the popularity of them back. Encouraged by the restoration of soft vegetal dye tones, but desiring a wider range of colors, pendulum is going to swing again. And they're going to realize we're getting some success with these pastel colored rugs, but there's only so many we can do. Think about the colors that we looked at yesterday on the chart. Think about Karen's colors, which are beautiful, but remember that indigo as a natural dye was not readily available, and that they were getting black from a chemical dye as well as red. So think about what all of the other colors look like. They are a limited range. There is no DLDB, dark, light, dull, bright, right? There's just kind of dark, light, dull, right? There's certainly no brights, and there's no really intense colors. So even with this new color palette, they are really sort of reaching for still pastel, but more colors. And they bring in a consultant from the East, and her name is Miss Lucy Cabot. She is a dye expert from Boston, Massachusetts. We have talked about her in Coffee Time. And she develops with DuPont, the chemical company DuPont, she develops a series of dyes that are in a very concentrated form that are introduced at first exclusively to reservations. So this is a nice turn of events, right? This is like these sort of benefactresses from the East and people talking to people and saying, you know, what about these beautiful rugs that everybody was snapping up? They cost a fortune. We couldn't keep them in stock. They fell by the wayside. They're having a revival, new look, new color palette, department store window. We need some more colors. And people are working together that are like the powers that be to like literally come up with a new palette of colors. It's interesting that so many women worked on this part of the process, right? Because the men are kind of like, not to be a sexist and to stereotype, but the men are kind of riding out there going like, oh, look at this barren and vast land. I think I'll have all of it. And they're setting things up, and they're really not working like clockwork without the help of a lot of other people who are expert in different things. And in this instance, somebody needed to be expert in creating a new color palette and creating a series of chemical dyes that would work like the natural dyes, but have a lot more variation. And these are two women that got together to get this done. So, woohoo! So the solutions resulted in beautiful yarns, and weavers were pleased by the flexibility of the tones that could be achieved. Think about what Karen just sent us with over dyeing the different colors, right? You could, with the amaranth, I mean, over dyeing that in two different ways, completely different colors every time. That's what they're doing here too, is experimenting not with the natural dyes anymore, with the chemical dyes, but fooling with shading and getting like infinite color choices. In the months that followed, the Diamond Dye Company, that's one of my favorite subjects. We have to come back to that at some point. We always mention the Diamond Dye Company in passing. I think they're a Vermont company. I do have a lot of their stuff, and we should look at it together because it's so interesting. The Diamond Dye Company produced and improved a series called the Old Navajo. The Old Navajo, that's what it was called. Wouldn't you like to get some of that sort of marketing material, some of those old boxes or something? So this is obviously a targeted product. This product also combined in one package the mordant with the colorant, thus relieving the weaver of hazardous procedures of acid mixing, right? So this is a big deal too, because we're looking at a powdered form. We're not looking at dangerous mordants and acids, right? We remember this from the Chetty Camp story, how dangerous the materials that they were using were to get the dye colors. Well, we are now at this point in the 1920s eliminating that from dye packaging. So this is another sort of speed bump and hurdle. And it's nice to know that this innovation reached the Southwest, where Native people were working too, because these are the people who are often forgotten when these kinds of things happen, right? New products, new innovations. It actually made it there first in this case. So working with these new materials produced a completely different style of rug. I'm going to show you some more gallery rugs. I had to include this at the end of this section, at least on the history of the Navajo trading post, just the history part. Overview. The author puts in I'm reading, the Navajo's love of beauty is reflected in the rug and perhaps the verse of the Navajo ceremony. And the ceremony is called the Night Way, right? This is a specific ceremony. And he feels like this best summarizes the spirit in which they live their lives. And it goes like this. In beauty I shall walk. In beauty you shall be my picture. In beauty you shall be my song. In beauty you shall be my medicine. In beauty my holy medicine. I think that is really, really beautiful. So let me come back over here. And Karen's rug, absolutely stellar. Let's come back here to where we left off. We left off yesterday. We're going to talk about technical stuff for just a few minutes. This is what the loom looks like. This is an illustration from the book. So when we talk about these looms, you see pictures of people to this day balancing them against the trunk of a tree. And you can see just how it's made with these Y branches and the way that they're strapped at the corners, right? And then there's kind of a drop where they've got their warp beam and they're stringing it and then working the yarns across from the bottom up. So all of this is not my area of knowledge at all. I learned a lot by looking at this diagram, but we will see pictures of people actually using these looms. I thought it was worth, for those of you who are weavers, and I know you are many. Oh, Becky, good to see you. This might be interesting. This whole book is fantastic. So now we are going to start our travels. And you know what, let me just do this first. That we're going to start looking at a series of what the old posts actually look like in photographs from the 1890s to the 1950s and 60s. And they're just such interesting layered photographs full of interesting details. But this book, just so you know, in case you're interested in this book is very technical when it comes to the process of sheep to rug. So we talk about the sheep, and I bracketed off just a small part of the conversation that the author gives us on the sheep, right? Because there was a lot to know about the changing of the sheep and experimenting with different breeds. He writes, the Navajo sheep is not a particular breed. The principal flocks raised on the reservation are a mixture of various strains, including the French Rambouillet, right now I can't say it when I'm looking at it, strains of Merino breed, Janus, good one, supplemented with the Corriedale rams. The main ancestral line is probably still the old Spanish Churro, which is where we started this episode yesterday morning. The fleece is relatively heavy, yielding approximately 8 to 10 pounds per animal. So for those of you that raise sheep and you do this part of it, maybe that was more interesting. He talks about the sheep, the shearing, the cleaning, the carding, beautiful illustrations in this book too, spinning, washing, and a lot about dyeing, So for those of you who are interested in natural dye, this is super interesting, and it's very, very in-depth. I'm not going to go into all of it, but there is a huge list of many, many pages that talks about the different flowers that makes very specific colors. This would be like our list of Cushing dyes without the swatch, just going on description. And it's, for example, soft brown, alder tree bark, yellow green, bee plant, greenish yellow, bitterball, mustard, still bitterball but the leaves, rose, prickly pear, coral pink, prickly pear, and mountain mahogany bark mixed together. So it's that kind of thing for many pages. So for a natural dyer, This is really interesting. It goes into like light canary, deepish reddish brown, because it's not showing swatches. So it's just giving us a description. This is also a moving target because your idea of reddish brown might be different than mine, right? Yours might be more orange, mine might be more russet. But regardless, dull olive green, really specific. And that would be Russian thistle. Which plants and flowers produce this possible color. So very, very handy. And then it talks a lot about the loom, about warping the loom, about doing the actual weaving. So all of that technical stuff is part of this book. It's very well explained, even to noodle schnitz like me, who it's all like, where's the Rosetta Stone? So all of that is here for you. And that after we move through the technical part, it brings us to the actual tour of the different trading posts, all Navajo, but different trading posts. So let's come back here. And putting this together, I put this together mostly this morning. I have to tell you, I haven't felt like this much of a tour guide in such a long time. I mean, it's picture after picture you'll see, but I feel like our bus is rolling up and I'm on the mic and I'm going, and to your left, there is a mountain elevations, 5,632. It's just these kinds of photos walking us through moment in time. There is no year on this photo, but remember the book is 1976. It's probably a contemporary photo for the famous Shiprock Trading Company, right? Ever-present, ubiquitous pickup trucks out front, really charming moment in time. Actually, they're giving the elevation. Can you believe it? I was joking. The elevation here is 4,903. Post office established 1904. Now, post office isn't the post office the way we know it, right? It's the trading post, the office of the trading post, established 1904 by Edward Foote. So the town of Shiprock is located on the San Juan River in the extreme northwestern New Mexico. And its present name is derived from the volcanic rock that's called Shiprock in that area. And apparently there's a huge igneous, huge towering mass that dominates the landscape 10 miles from the town. And there's all this sort of storytelling and mythology that goes around with it. But that's where this name comes from, because it is an odd name, isn't it? And let me tell you a little bit about this before we look at some of the rugs that are related to the Shiprock trading post. The origin of Shiprock, the site itself, dates to 1872, right? Not the establishment of the post, but 1872, the year that Yellowstone was instituted. There's a lot of people moving westward at this point. By Thomas Keam, Keam, who scouted the area for the U.S. government. And he was actually looking for a place to set up a Fort Defiance sub-agency office, right? So you see what I mean here about roundups at this time, too, of the native people. That's what the idea was. But he found this spot that was in this place that one could survive with water nearby, good trees, good soil, just a ideal place as they go. Because there's not every place is going to be ideal. When you're during westward expansion, there's a lot of places that are far from ideal. So he scouts this and he recognizes it as a good place, but not for their purposes. So it doesn't become a post until 1904. The first superintendent, his name was W.T. Shelton, and the book says he's a man whose contribution to Navajo weaving has been largely overlooked. Shelton conceived of the idea, this is a great idea, of having Navajo fairs, like in the modern sense, like a fair, festival, inviting not only the native people, but traders as well. And they would display extensive amount of exhibits of their rugs and the things that they made. Best examples of Navajo craftsmanship. And people could come for whatever your reason is, whether you're buying for a store, you're buying, to ship abroad, whatever you have in your mind. This is a good place to go to check out. It's like a trade show, right? So he starts these things in October of, 1912, right? And they are a huge success. It's an annual event. It's a big deal. It allows the weavers at Shiprock, meaning the native people at Shiprock who are weaving, to make money, to turn a good profit. This is a very profitable post. Prizes were awarded. So not only are you getting your work done and you're following the picture they pinned up on the wall for you, but you're getting an award because you did an extra good job. I mean, that's very satisfying. Very nice idea. Very encouraging right after this period in the 1920s that was like wah wah. Something like this was a good morale builder upper again. Let me show you a picture. There's a picture of that first fair. Good afternoon, Shirley. Good to see you. So we're talking about shiprock. Hold on one second while I find the picture for you. Oh, we are way down here. We're going to have to split this into another episode. We'll probably have to do this tomorrow too. So here's the Shiprock Fair. What a moment in time. Take a look at this. Now these are two pictures, right, from two different sides of one of the squares, right? This isn't the entire fair. But you can see there's a little permanent building on the side that was probably part of one of their buildings, possibly the rug room, possibly like one of the post buildings. Who knows? Somebody knows. But these are two different angles of the fair. And look at all these beautiful rugs. These are just rugs, right? Look at all these beautiful rugs that are hanging out for all to see. 1912. And let me show you a close-up of the fair, right? This is in one of the pictures I just showed you, but not very good quality picture, as you can imagine. This is the stall that belonged to Hubble, right? Remember we were talking about Hubble yesterday. We'll come back to him. The two gray hills, right? Their sort of brand. So these are the ones that we're seeing. His banner is on top. It's very hard to see because it wasn't just Shiprock who displayed. It was everybody who could get there, who had rugs, could display examples of, and that's how they were able to give prizes to the best, because they weren't just competing with each other. They were competing with everybody who made rugs in the area who could get there. And the reason I'm showing you this image is because if you remember in our conversation yesterday, we talked about that renaissance that Hubble had, that great idea to go. He was the first one to want to go back to that early design aesthetic, right? The early sort of classical period of the rugs. And look at how simple these are for the most part, right? They're the crosses, the simple shapes. And I'm just going to go back to the other photo to show you that part we were looking at is on the bottom photo on the far right. You can see how much busier the other rugs are, right? In general, the ones on the bottom photo on the far right are the Hubble rugs. Those are the least busy of all pictured. And I think, isn't that cool that it said in the book, this is something that happened. He went back to these, right at this time, these classical styles, right? These simpler motifs. And then we see this first fair where we get these comparative photographs and we're able to actually look. And I looked, that's what I'm looking for. When I figured out what stall was his, I said, I wonder if his are different. Oh my God, they are different. They are different than the others. So this is just a great moment walking in there and going, you know, have you heard that Hubble's Post is doing this sort of revival, renaissance, return to the early classical period of design of the Navajo? Well, there they are. I mean, it's just so cool. You read about it, you see it. It's just so cool. Now, Shiprock, getting away from the fair and talking about what the Shiprock rugs look like, their classic design is called the Yei, Y-E-I. And we talked a little bit about the figural rug yesterday. There are some trading posts who are only doing figural rugs, Sunbonnet Sioux style in silhouette. That's a stupid reference, right? But it's the same period, right? 1920s. At Shiprock, they are doing like full sort of frontal clothed motifs. You're seeing faces, right? So these are a little bit different. It's a variation on the figural rug. These are dancers, right? I should qualify that by saying these could be dancers. They are holding wheat shafts and arrows, but they do have a dance costume on. So it's hard to know, but we're going to see a series of images that are these Yei, Y-E-I, rugs. And each one, they're all called Yei, right? So there really isn't going to be like, this is mustard Yei on a white ground. No, it's a Yei rug, Y-E-I. That's it. That's all the info you get. But you can see how different this one was from the last one. So really, really different. The color, this design was developed by Will Evans, right? Distinctly like, you know, English sounding person. So he's probably the trading post owner, or at least he ran this part of things at Shiprock. That is certainly not a sort of Native American name. Will Evans comes up with this design right after the World War I period, and he is inspired by sand paintings. I wish I had the sense to put a sand painting in that. I meant to do that. But you know, when you see paintings that are done with sand, painted sand, um, they look like this, and that's where he got the inspiration for this yay pattern, which again brings up the question, how many of these Navajo rugs are designed by people who are actually Navajo? From the research in this book, it seems like not many. Putting some motifs in where it's convenient, yes, but in general, pulling from other motifs and trying to come up with designs that they hope will sell, right? So this rug is usually small to moderate size, carrying bright colors, slender front-facing figures, surrounded by, in most cases, a red and blue figured rainbow goddess that serves as the border down the sides and across the bottom. Additional designs usually include interspacings of corn stalks and arrows, right? So this is true of the two that we just saw. This is the Shiprock basic character that was drawn after World War II by Will Evans. So this is what he pulled out of the sand paintings that he had seen. Lynn says the yay rugs seem to gear toward harvest to me. You know, they could, because harvesting is going to be a big part of the year. That's a great point. The corn stalk is definitely, the stylized corn stalk, if we look back at the last one, is a really big motif, right? So there's the big corn stalk is like the central motif in this. Let's see if the first one also had the corn stalks in the right hand and the arrows like under the, no, is that a corn stalk? No, that's like a wheat shaft. Well, many of them do have corn stalks. Let's go forward and see if we can find some more. Basic character. Here's another. No, that one's different. Spoiler alert. So I don't know. I mean, absolutely there's a harvest theme happening here. I wish that the book addressed that, because that is an interesting angle. All it tells us is there's a lot going on with the sunburst design, stalk lines, corn stalk, stylized corn stalk, and the yay figure. Feather lines as well for arrows. There's like feather lines that drop down to connect arrows. Interesting point. This isn't something that the author addresses, but I think you're absolutely right? The proof is in the pudding. This character is also a Shiprock character, but you can see this is very different. This is a character in profile. This is called the Yebiche. So this is a slightly, well, it's a quite different variation on the yay that we were seeing. So it still has the word yay in it, but attached is the ending biche. And this is a different style of rug, right? Different costume altogether, a bit more complex. So this is another one of their sort of distinct designs. And this is another Shiprock, right? This is the Lukachuke yay dancers. So again, we're seeing, like in the first rug, this kind of dropped waist, almost like, I don't want to say hula skirt, but that kind of style. And these are definitely dancers holding up feathers in a dance. So we're getting away from the Shiprock is near in proximity the Lukachuke. And the Lukachuke, literally, the word means white patch of reeds that extends out. The Lukachuke is going to be our next sort of post stop if we were driving. And their trading post was established in 1916, so 10 years later. But they certainly are using this figural design in a slightly different way. This is their version of it. There seems to be more multiples in general, emphasis toward dancers away from harvest, away from hunting. I say that, and yet I don't know what this design is. Let me see if I can identify that real fast. In their designs, they're still using that rainbow, not in this particular rug, but that rainbow goddess around the bottom. No, these are still dancers, this design says. Yep, this is still dancing, a dancing moment. So just, I guess, a different focus. The Lukache area is a second source of the yay rug. So in other words, they were also doing the same kind of design. Here the products are larger in size, and they use aniline dyes for color. So right out of the gate, while Shiprock is still using natural dyes, Lukachuke is doing very similar rugs and using aniline dyes and getting very specific colors. We move even further. We're basically taking a road trip right now, and if you have this book, you'll see it gives you a map and the geography. So this is the vast panorama that we're seeing here as we approach the Tikno posts which is the gateway to the four corners, right? That's the translation of that. You see that little trading post in the middle of a really barren spot, right? And it's as it should be. The name of the post, Teak Nose Post, translates as Circle of Cottonwoods. The elevation here is a bit higher, 5,450. Post office established much later in 1961 by Bob French. The owner was Russell Foote's, right? We've had another Foote's Post. This must be a family business, but the Teak Nose Posts will bring us, their rugs will bring us to a very different place. I just have to show you, this is a bit of silliness, but I just have to show you, this is the post from a distance in probably the 1960s, 1970s. This is the post in 1945, when it was smaller before they added on, and they already have their Coca-Cola sign out front. I mean, isn't that something? So it's so interesting for me to, I mean, maybe that's not the thing I should be fixating on in this conversation, but I just thought, how interesting is that? American pickers, eat your hearts out, right? So Teak Nose Posts, example of a rug. This is a classic example of one of their rugs. They're very heavy into the mixture of greens: sage green, celery green, olive green, lichen green, moss green, olive brown, heading toward olive and into the browns and the bark colors. So this is a Teak Nose Post rug. Lynn says, I had to look up what yay meant to the Navajo. It's meditation between the spirits and humans, involving the natural elements. How interesting. It is a ceremonial symbol of the male and female. Super interesting, Lynn. Thanks for looking that up. I did not have the sense to look that up. That is really meaningful to this conversation. Thank you so much. That adds a lot. Interesting. It's very spiritual, isn't it? I mean, these people are making a very, very at least decent, if not good living, making rugs. So this is where their focus is. Depending on the part of the country, even in the early 20th century, people are living to this day in very different ways. Well, these people have a business set up, and this is where their focus is. So I'm not surprised that we're not seeing more sort of hunting and living off the land motifs. We are seeing motifs that cross with English people from the East Coast, right? So things that are design-wise and style-wise effective and don't really resemble or represent Native American life or hitherto Native American life. It's really, we're going geometric and we're going artsy. This is the Art Deco period. You can see that a little bit. I think you can see that in the Teak Nose Post rugs more than others, like this one. So they have a bunch of signature rugs too. This is one, and they're all just called Teak Nose Posts, right? They don't have specific names. This is another one. This is our crosses pattern, along within the center, the onion blossom. I don't know why I struggle with that so much, because onion blossoms are so delicious to eat, but I always want to say orange blossom for some reason. I'm sorry, squash blossom, right? So it was onion blossom yesterday. This one is much more specifically the squash blossom. Yeah, there is a difference. Of course, there's a difference. Squash blossom, one of the main motifs for this trading post, along with the half diamonds with the arrow going across, right? So this is where motifs come in. And remember, some trading posts are using the alphabet, using language. Others are just using motifs that they feel look right and make a nice design, right? So there's not necessarily a story in the rugs that we're looking at. It's just that they are picking up motifs, and if they are effective and they want to use this one, they're going to use this one. If they want to use like a T border, they're going to use a T border. I mean, if they want to use diamonds, they can use diamonds. It depends on how, I'm ripping pages as I go, how the rugs are selling and how those designs are doing. And of course, each post wants to be different than the other posts. This is the crystal post. Remember, crystal, like the water so clear that they call this post crystal, where the crystal waters flow out. This post is established, the earliest of the ones we know, in 1903 by Don Jensen. And there is such a beautiful description. Let's see what time it is. It's, we're going to have to hit this again because there's a lot more to go. I'm not going to do the description. I know that was a teaser. But there was a diarist who came through, Lieutenant James H. Simpson. He was quite a famous diarist that was moving westward in the middle 19th century. 1849, he wrote in his diary in September about this land and the towering pines and firs and the aspen and the bordering streams and the great variety of shrubbery and hop vine and all of the fruit and intertwined flowers, profusions of everything, right? He waxes very lyrical and poetic. And it perfectly describes this area. This is a super lush, you can see much more varied area, very grassy area, much more lush than some of the others. But this is a difficult climate area, right? There's a lot of variety. This is the crystal post we're talking about. So the crystal post is run by Archibald Sweetland. And Archibald Sweetland is in this photo. If you look at the back row of people, he's not the guy standing in the opening, the doorway. He's the guy to the right of him. So he's seated, right? So he's the 1, 2, 3, fourth from the left, seated. Archibald Sweetland. And I read this long description from 1849 by the lieutenant about the mountain greenery. In our mountain greenery where God paints the scenery. You must know that song, right? In this beautiful mountain greenery, red rock, all of this. It's a beautiful area, and it's beautiful in the summer and in the sort of in between seasons, but in the winter it is entirely impractical, right? That was a quote, entirely impractical. There was over 18 inches of snow in 1884 when this traveler was writing. 18 inches of snow in April, so, at one time. So this is not an area that a lot of people can deal with, live with, survive in. The success of the early Navajo trading ventures often depended on, as you can imagine, seasonal handicaps. Sometimes the snow, the weather, the extreme cold and snow were huge deterrents to the operation of the business. People are not coming through to shop when there is 18 inches of snow in April. So for a lot of places like Crystal, from October to the late spring, it was a disaster, and people just couldn't survive or travel through. So it was kind of a marvel when Archibald Sweetland came and, I mean, by himself and just lived here, 25 miles north of the Washington Pass, all on his own, in isolation, getting things going. There's native people here, but there's no one else who wants to come and live here from the east. It's quite bad. He comes, he makes it work. Against all odds, he makes this post very successful. He creates a permanent post, and we're seeing the picture of it here. Interesting, just an interesting character to the story. Hold on one second, let me show you the interior of that post. So that's Archibald. This is the catalog. This is out of order. Remember, what was his name? Moore. What was his first name from yesterday? John Moore, the Scotsman, John Moore. This picture is out of order in the book, so I placed it out of order stupidly. This is the Navajo catalog I referred to yesterday from 1911, how John Moore made such a success of his post by putting this catalog out. We saw some images from it. I didn't want to forget to show it to you. I forgot to include it yesterday, but if you ever see this catalog, it's from 1911, you absolutely have to get this. It's super, super rare. There's tons of photographs inside, and it really documents the Moore trading post. This was his famous, classic, successful, innovative, way ahead of its time shopping catalog. And here is Crystal Post, right? Archibald's post. I think this is Archibald in the doorway here with the little one on his shoulders, but he's there with some of the weavers who live locally. Him and one other guy look like they're not from there. Two of these kids are doing their own thing, right? Everybody else is kind of the same from there. They really stand out. These are the tough guys that can stick out this climate, but they really make this a success of a trading post. It's one of the big ones, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it. We're not talking about all of them, and the books don't include all of them. So this is the post interior, right? It's kind of like a little bit Annie Oakley, belly up to the bar boys kind of thing. You got the hats, you got the ropes, the guns and stuff. This isn't where the rugs were, because remember, most posts, rugs are such a big part of the business that there's a rug room. This is an example of a crystal rug. So we're not seeing a border, we're seeing a lot of variety, a lot of color change in the bars. We're seeing, I don't know if they're calling it the onion blossom or the squash blossom, but we're seeing a variation on that design as the main repeat motif. This is an explanation of some of the designs that they do. That's something that this book does really well for every chapter. I don't cover it every time. They talk about the solid color panels versus the wavy line panels or bars. versus the arrows in the middle versus coming down the feathers, right? We wouldn't necessarily identify that design as feathers, but that is what it is. And then the stacked diamonds at the bottom, it's extremely handy to be able to look at these kinds of images to decode a rug. Really handy. If you're into it and you're going to continue to research it, these are really important illustrations. This is the post that's called Two Gray Hills, and we know this is one of the super, super important ones. You can see, I'm guessing that why it's called Two Gray Hills is right there in front of us, right? Again, in the vast unknown, in the middle of what they're calling wastelands, the Chaco wastelands. Not my word, it's in the book. This post, it doesn't say when it was established, but it was established by Willard Layton and Darold Stock. Darold Stock. Elevation almost 6,000 at that point. The Gray Hills rug becomes the most expensive Navajo rug. The Gray Hills doesn't always refer to there being two hills, although on this rug you can see on opposite ends, those might be the two hills that we just saw. The rugs that they are producing, there's a series of rugs done in grays and browns that are called, all of them, you guessed it, Gray Hills. So it doesn't really help us with the identifying or breaking down the motif, but these are all Gray Hills rugs. Let me show you a few more. No obvious hills here. We're moving toward Celtic, right? And this makes me question the use of professional painters and designers helping design these rugs, because some of them get very, very far off the beam and away from Native American design, authentic design. It wasn't about authentic. It was about selling rugs. So for this chapter 2, they give us a little bit of information. That big main motif is the central border for most of their rugs with, they say, a crystalline like diamond sort of crenellated edges, like castle, you know, with triangles. They've got borders in black. There's often a second border that is incorporated with, you know, you see the top right-hand corner, very graphic, lots of outlined diamonds, boxed crosses like on the bottom left, and then filler shapes on the bottom right. Hooks and diamonds, they're calling it. It's a filler shape. It does not correlate to Native American anything. It's a shape that is easy to weave and decorative that makes a nice rug. Now we're moving on to, I am gonna stop. You know, let's stop at Chinle and let's do this tomorrow. I'll come back on tomorrow to finish this conversation. Let's do that. So let me hold on. Let me put a placeholder in here. Let's start at Chinle tomorrow. That's where the tour picks up. I'm not normally on Monday, Tuesday, not tomorrow, Thursday. I'm sorry. Tomorrow I'm taking a day to visit one of our buddies in our group, Jan, who you sometimes see in photos. She lives near me, and she opened a thrift store that opens tomorrow, and she supports everything that I do, so I want to be there and support what she does. So I won't be on tomorrow, but let's finish this conversation on Thursday, because Friday is bingo night. So I won't be able to finish it on Friday, and I don't want it to fall by the wayside, because I think it's important to conclude this conversation and pull out what we can about these Native American, specifically Navajo rugs. So I won't be with you tomorrow for coffee time, but I will be with you on Thursday for coffee time at noon, and I will be with you on Friday for bingo night. I just finished the graphic thing for the bingo night, so look for that in the next hour. I will post that in the description of this video. If you come back to it, I'll post it in Ribbon Candy Hooking on the website, and I'll post it in our Facebook group, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. But before you go, I just happened to check my eBay this morning. I follow a lot of things, so it always wants to show me what new things come up. As you can imagine, I follow a lot of kinds of rugs. So that's going to be our first slide for Thursday. I follow a lot of kinds of rugs, and it showed me, eBay showed me some, you can't imagine how many rugs, how many Navajo rugs are on eBay. This is a 1920s rug that is on eBay right now. Buy it now for $399. This is a yay rug with the cornstalk in the middle, right? And the goddess going around the bottom. We just talked about this. This is under plexiglass in a shadow box frame. It's small. It is so beautiful. So this happened to pop up, and I thought, oh, let me capture that so I can tell you. And then I saw this ganado rug, and that is one of the types of rugs we talked about yesterday. We're going to talk more about the ganado rug on Thursday. But I'm just making the point, I think this one was $699 or $680, something like that. This one was a lot more. So I'm just making the point, I didn't even look, and I found just in my feed, and I guess I was, you know, this makes me think Big Brother's been busy, because I don't look for Navajo rugs, and I haven't been looking for Navajo rugs, but I've been searching Google for Navajo rugs. I wonder if they're in cahoots with here's a conspiracy theory, with eBay. That's why they're suddenly showing me lots of Navajo rugs. But I was very happy. $399 for this, right? If you're into this, if you look at these colors, I mean, man, isn't it good? So that's something to do. Go down the eBay rabbit hole. Look up a Navajo rug. The thing is, sometimes they're using words because it's documented, but they don't know to use Navajo, but they'll use like shiprock or chinle or something like that. There's all kinds of ways that you can find rugs that are there that are pertinent to this conversation, that are exactly what we've been talking about, and they're not very much money. They were more money back in the day than they are now on eBay. I mean, it's okay, 300, 600, it's not nothing, is it? But it's not the kind of money that they went for in the money of the day. I'll have to do the math to get that right. At that time, money was something like, I want to say 40 times what it was now. You know, like a fur coat would be like $30 or something. I'll have to do the math. I'll have to check because I'm going back to the tour guide days and it's been like 15 years. But these rugs are a bargain. That's my point. They are a bargain on eBay. So let's return to this, like I say, on Thursday, and I won't be with you tomorrow. I'll be with you Thursday. Remember bingo. Remember to get your cards so that you're ready for Friday. The theme for bingo this month is fine art bingo. So we are looking at the most exquisite paintings and illustrations that I think are right up our alley for rug hookers. Themes and compositions, some famous artists, some I'll be introducing you to for the first time. Artists that I have never heard of, not that I'm the end-all do-all, but we can't possibly know every artist that's living and dead that's ever been, right? That your first name would be Encyclopedia and your last name would be Brown. Lynn says, absolutely love today's. Oh, good. Well, you contributed so much to it, Lynn. Thank you so much. Inspiration and great information. Janice, you too. Thank you for the help on the sheep. We work together great as a team, huh? So, all right. So I won't see you tomorrow. I will be with you Thursday. Coffee time. Don't forget about bingo. I will see you soon. If you need me or you have anything to add to this conversation, write me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com like Karen did, and I can put some more slides into our Thursday episode of Coffee Time. I will see you then. Have a great day tomorrow.